Northern Europe, in the 9th century, was not a world of nations, but of fragments. Small kingdoms, shifting alliances, and constant uncertainty. In Viking culture, power was not inherited easily. It was taken, defended, and, often, lost just as quickly. Reputation mattered. Strength mattered. Not only physical strength, but the kind that could command loyalty and inspire fear. It was a world shaped as much by belief as by violence, where the gods were never distant, and fate was something to be faced, not avoided. And yet, from within this harsh and uncompromising society, emerges a figure who seems to contradict everything it stood for. A man remembered as a warrior, who may not have been able to walk. His name was Ivar. He is known to history as Ivar the Boneless. It is a name that has endured for centuries, and one that raises more questions than it answers. What does boneless mean? Some historians have suggested a physical condition, perhaps brittle bones, or a disorder that made walking difficult, even impossible. Others have argued that the name may not have been literal at all. In Old Norse, such descriptions were not always straightforward. Boneless could imply flexibility, agility, or even something symbolic. A man who could not be easily pinned down. There is also a third possibility, that the name tells us less about the man himself and more about the people who told his story. Because when we look closely at the sources, we are not seeing Ivar directly. We are seeing him through layers of memory, shaped, retold, and perhaps transformed. Ivar is often described as the son of Ragnar Lothbrok, a name that echoes through both history and legend. But Ragnar himself is a complicated figure. He appears in multiple sources across different regions, and over time, these accounts begin to blur together. Many historians now believe that Ragnar may not refer to a single individual, but rather a composite, a merging of several Viking leaders into one enduring myth. If that is true, then Ivar's story begins not with certainty, but with ambiguity. He is not simply the son of a man, but the heir to a legend. And legends carry expectations. If Ivar did, in fact, live with a physical limitation, then his path through Viking society would not have been an easy one. This was a culture that celebrated warriors, where strength was visible and often immediate. But not all power is expressed through force. Some of it is quieter, more patient, more deliberate. Later accounts describe Ivar not as a frontline fighter, but as a strategist, a figure who observed, calculated, and acted with precision. Where others sought glory in battle, he may have understood something more enduring, control. Across the North Sea, another story was unfolding. What we now call England was not yet a single, unified kingdom. Instead, it was a patchwork of competing powers: Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex. These kingdoms fought among themselves, forming alliances, breaking them, and constantly shifting the balance of power. They were strong, but divided. And division creates opportunity. Viking raids had already begun along the coasts, but these were, for the most part, seasonal, opportunistic. What was coming next would be something very different. According to later tradition, execution of Ragnar Lothbrok became the turning point. Captured by King Ella of Northumbria, Ragnar is said to have been executed in a pit of snakes. It is a powerful image, but historians remain cautious. The earliest sources are limited, and the story itself may have been shaped over time to serve a purpose. Because revenge stories do something important. They simplify conflict. They transform complex political events into something personal, and they make what comes next feel inevitable. In the late 9th century, a large Viking force arrived in England, what we now call the Great Heathen Army. This was not a typical raid. It did not come and go with the seasons. It stayed. It moved between kingdoms, exploited rivalries, and applied sustained pressure over time. This suggests something more organized, more deliberate than earlier Viking activity. And at the center of this effort is where we find Ivar. It is tempting to imagine this period purely in terms of violence. Battles, destruction, conquest. But what stands out in many accounts is not just brutality, but coordination. The ability to choose when to fight, when to wait, and when to negotiate. This is not the behavior of chaos. It is the behavior of strategy. And whether through direct command or shared leadership, Ivar appears to have been part of that system. A system that understood that power is not just taken in a moment, but built over time. In the end, Ivar the Boneless remains an uncertain figure. The historical record is limited. The stories are layered. He has been remembered as a cripple, a strategist, a conqueror, even a monster. But perhaps these are not contradictions. Perhaps they are reflections of how history is told, not as a perfect record of what happened, but as a collection of stories shaped by those who survived and those who chose to remember. And somewhere within those stories, between fact and legend, Ivar still exists,